Here are some problems from solving trig functions with the calculator and the unit circle in the IVSL textbook on page 203. To review, here is the unit circle. This is for 30 degrees, your cosine and your sine. Remember in the first quadrant that the cosine would be positive. The sine would also be positive. In the second quadrant, the cosine is now negative and the sine is positive. Down in quadrant 3, the cosine is negative and the sine is also negative. In the fourth quadrant, remember that x value is the cosine. The cosine is positive, but the sine is negative. That's your y value. So that'll help us if you notice that square root of 3 over 2 is also found square root of 3 over 2 with 30 degrees and 330 degrees. So you'll have multiple answers in the unit circle. This is just talking first revolution, 0 to 2 pi. Feel free to read some information on page 203 in regards to finding angle measures. Let's jump into our first example. We want to find two angles for theta on the unit circle from 0 to 2 pi, so that first revolution, such that the sine of the angle is negative 0.4. So what we're trying to find out is what is one of the angles and what's the other angle. Remember, you can always pause if you need more time to write these problems down. So to find the angle of theta, let's say theta 1, we use inverse trigonometry with our calculator. So sine inverse of negative 0.4. And you'd enter that in your calculator. If we want it to be in radians, we want to make sure our calculator is in radian mode, not in degree mode. And when you do that, you get approximately negative 0.412. Well, it's asking us for positive angles. So if I were to create this theta 1, negative 0.42 radians, and this is my theta 1, how do I create a new angle that is, let's say, coterminal, if you remember that definition? So if here is something coterminal, it would start at 0, it's going to wrap around and finish at that terminal side. So to find now that blue angle, we'll call this theta 2, you would take your total revolution of 2 pi and subtract out this little piece right here of 0.421. And we will have an angle in the blue, wrapping around here, of 2 pi is 6.28 radians minus 0.412 radians is approximately 5.87 radians. Now there is one other angle that is also on the unit circle we haven't talked about. If I come over to here, remember this is a negative sign in this quadrant, so there has to be a negative sign in this quadrant. So to find that angle, either you can use reference angles or take pi and add another 0.412 radians. Because this distance from here to here is pi, adding in another 0.142 would give us what we call theta 3. So pi plus 0.412, remember pi represents 3.14 radians plus 0.412 radians is approximately 3.55 radians. all of these angles in the red, the negative angle that we just found here, or the one in the blue, 0.57 radians, or the one in the green, are all coterminal angles. They all have the same sine value of -0.4, but it only wants us to find the positive angle. So our final two answers would be the two in the blue and green.